Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another lecture in lieu of the subject Monetary and Fiscal Framework in Islamic Finance. You must have remembered now the course code MBF 707, and this lecture is coming from ComSat's Institute of Information Technology, Virtual Campus, Islamabad. Students, today's lecture is in continuation of the previous lecture, which was related to fiscal policy, Islamic versus conventional framework. Continuing the same topic today once again. Before I continue the topic, let us very briefly review what we have covered in the last lecture. In the last lecture, actually, this was the agenda of the two lectures. Introduction, we discussed the role of government in Islam, fiscal policy in conventional perspective. We discussed the Keynesian model and the Islamic perspective and the early Islamic period. We will discuss today in detail. The beginning of fiscal policy we studied in the last lecture in detail. The fiscal policy in conventional system was introduced by the Keynesian contribution after the World War, when there was Great Depression and the classical economics totally failed to recover, and the explanation of the Great Depression was given by Keynes, in addition to so many other economists contemporary to Keynes. Keynes, being the son of the Lord, his father was member of House of Lords. There is long history behind son and the father, how these people were engaged in the economic matters of the British government. You can read from their original books. If you Google, you can now even search out the e-books related to Keynes and his family, and the contribution of father and the son in macroeconomic activities of the British government, when the British government actually had a lot of colonies, including Pakistan, India, the subcontinent, in fact. And Keynes gave the explanation in the form of the liquidity preference, and then liquidity preference, which ultimately turns to the liquidity trap. And what is the liquidity trap situation? Actually, starting from the liquidity preference, as I explained in the last lecture, the government increases money supply with the expectation of decreasing interest rate, motivating people to undertake investment. But what happens? The situation actually turns against the government expectations, and how government supplies a certain quantity of money in the economy, and people hold it. People hold with the expectation of the increasing interest rate in the future. लोग ये तवक्को रखते हैं कि आज जो इंटरेस्ट रेट कम हो रहा है, ये कल बढ़ जाएगा. And when the interest rate goes up, there is inverse relationship between the rate of interest and the price of bond. So if interest rate is increasing, or it is expected to increase in the future, the price of bond would fall. And according to the principles of economics and finance, if the prices go down of any commodity, its demand increases. So when price is likely to fall in case of bond, so people with this expectation hold on money or cash, whatever cash is supplied in the economy, and people wait till the price of bond goes down, and people rush to the market to buy bonds, so in order to earn capital gains. Dear students, this is the explanation given by the Keynes and the Keynesian economists for the Great Depression after the World War. And then the recipe which was suggested by Keynes is that government should interfere in the market, in the economy. And the interference of the government was suggested in the form of government spending on various projects. When government spending increase, people earn money, and a multiplier process of the business cycle starts. Expenditures of one part of the community becomes the income of another part of the community. So when they spend, it becomes the income of another component of the society. When they spend, again this becomes the earning of some other people in the economy, and this process continues, and in the end the cumulative size of the economic activity is much higher. So when through this multiplier effect the economies can recover. So this is the explanation which was given by Keynes. Today we will continue the Keynesian model in further detail, and why we are discussing the Keynesian model, so that you could practically understand how the economic activities boost up and ultimately accumulate to a big number of the GDP or the national output, and what is the process. So in order to understand the process of multiplication or the multiplier of national income, there is utmost need to understand the Keynesian framework. Then further to this, why there is need to study the Keynesian system, we will be discussing very important component of the fiscal policy, which is known as zakat. In Islamic framework of fiscal policy, zakat holds significant role. So zakat basically boosts up the marginal propensity to consume, and this marginal propensity to consume, how it plays its role in the multiplication of national income. There is the answer to this question is what are the mathematical things, what are the calculations through which this process is completed. So that is why we are assuming the Keynesian model, so that when we ultimately develop the Islamic model of fiscal policy, we should be able to clearly understand in parallel with the Keynesian model, which is one of the leading models. Now, the Keynesian economics, how Keynesian economics works, is simple closed economic model in which there are three sectors, C, I and G. Now E stands for planned expenditures. So basically this is the demand side of the economy, and this E, planned expenditures, must be equal to the total real output produced in the economy according to the Keynesian model for the purpose of equilibrium. So what are the components of this aggregate demand or aggregate expenditure in the economy? As I mentioned earlier, there are three according to in the simple closed economic model. So in this framework, the first component is C, which is consumption expenditures by the households, by the people or the consumers who earn their income, and then they consume a part of their income and they try to save the rest of the amount. And I represents the business sector. This is a business demand for different goods and services. And what is the difference between C and I? If both are the demand for goods and services, the main difference is when households purchase different items, for example, the furniture, the computers, and so many other things, for example, electric appliances for their household use. This is the objective is consumption, and there is no objective of further generation or regeneration of income. In the line of the business, when we say investment, why it is known as investment? Because business, if is purchasing the similar say cars or durable items, furniture, computers, electric appliances, so all these things, all these items are purchased with the objective of enhancing productive activities. So these items are actually employed in the production or productive activities. For example, if air condition or if computers are purchased for the office, so obviously these items will be used. For example, computer will be used for the business activities, which is in fact the earning purpose, not the final consumption purpose. So computer facilities are used, for example, maintaining the record, programming and recording the activities, business activities, analyzing the data, history of business, all these things. So when computers are used for this purpose, and it is in fact an economic activity generating the outcome, generating some income. So this is the major difference between consumption and investment. Similarly, if air condition is purchased by the business for the business purpose, for the use in the office or for the use at the place where machines are running. So basically that the purpose of installation of ACs is to enhance productivity of the laborers or the workers. How productivity is enhanced on account? The productivity is enhanced simply by creating conducive environment for the workers. So if workers are provided with the conducive environment, with the favorable environment to produce and undertake their daily day-to-day economic activities, obviously this will help increase the production level on account of increased activity. Productivity and productive activities. Now G is another component of the aggregate demand or the planned expenditure. G represents government or the public sector. So a part of the output produced in the economy is demanded by the public sector. So you remember I very clearly explained, whenever we say public sector, it means the government. So public sector in fact represents the government. So if government is purchasing different goods and services, again this is part of the expenditure on behalf of the government on the goods and services which are produced within the economy. Since we are discussing simple closed economy, therefore we are ignoring the expenditures of all these sectors on the foreign made goods, because that also makes one important component of the aggregate demand. So all the goods and services which we consume or business purchases or the public sector purchase, all these goods are not domestically produced. A part of it is imported. So some of the goods and services are therefore produced abroad. So students, this is brief description of C, I and G. So C is for households, I is for business sector and G is for the government. The graphical explanation of this equation is this is the slope of the gradient of the line, total expenditure line, which includes three components, C, I and G. So C, I and G. So C, I and G I have already explained, and the slope, since I and G are generally autonomously given, autonomously defined, which are independent of the national output. So if business expenditures are undertaken irrespective of the level of output in the economy, that is known as autonomous. Similarly, if government expenditures are independent of Y or the national output, whatever is the national output, but government runs its expenditures and the projects according to its own agenda, according to its own planning and the timeline. So according to their own timelines, the businesses and the public sector actually undertake expenditures. So the only thing which is in fact giving us, or which gives rise to the slope of this line, which is shown here, the red line, that indicates the slope of basically this red line is the marginal propensity to consume, which is the slope of the consumption function. Now in this diagram, it has been shown how the increase in government expenditures cause increase in the national output. If government expenditures are enhanced from initially G1 to new expenditure G2, then this line shifts by the amount of the additional government expenditures, that is G2 minus G1. And here in this diagram, delta G indicates addition of the government expenditures. So if government expenditures increase by this amount, obviously the national income will increase by the simple process of multiplier, as I mentioned earlier. The expenditures by one component of the society becomes the income of another component, and their spending becomes another component, and so on. This way the demand at each stage is generated and created. So students, most of the time the increase in national income is much higher than the increase in government expenditures, just because of the cumulative factor of multiplier effect. The multiplier effect is the process by which the income the expenditures of one part of the community becomes the income of another, and this continues. There are so many cycles, business cycles in the economy, which give birth to the national income. So when we accumulate, the number is much higher than the actual government expenditures in the economy. So this diagram has shown the effect of increase in government expenditure. Government expenditures are shown by delta G on the y-axis, and increase in national income is shown by delta y. Now, having explained the multiplier effect in this figure, let's see how mathematically, how with the help of equation, this is calculated. This is the initial equation. You must be familiar. I explained earlier. Y, which is total output produced in the economy, you can say GDP of the economy, and C, I, and G representing three components of the aggregate demand. What does that mean? Why the equilibrium, the equation, the equilibrium sign is put between Y and these three components? Because this output which is produced in the economy is demanded by these three sectors. So if the output produced in the economy is completely exhausted in these three components, in these three sectors of the economy, then obviously it can be indicated with the help of an equation. Y is equal to C plus I plus G. Now in this equation, in this is simply delta of the first equation. Delta means when changes occur on the left hand side of the equation, right hand side of the equation, then the national output is compelled to increase if the right hand side is increasing. And this is in fact identity. So basically left hand side and the right hand side are explanation of the same concept of economic activities, but these are only two different aspects of explaining the same concept. Why I is dropped? Because I is considered to be the autonomous exogenous, and the change in I is considered as 0. We do not want to see the impact of I. If we want to see the impact of I, then we will add delta I. So it is simple mathematical convention कि अगर आप किसी वेरिएबल का इफेक्ट देखना चाहते हैं तो उसका डेल्टा आप इक्वेशन में रहने देते हैं और बाकी जिसका इफेक्ट आप नहीं देखना चाहते उसको आप ड्रॉप कर देते हैं. दिस इज आल्सो नोन एज कंपैरेटिव स्टैटिक एनालिसिस. Comparative static analysis. So in this comparative static analysis, we want to see the effect of change in government expenditures only. Now when government expenditures are changed, people earn some income because of the government projects, because of the employment opportunities on account of government spending on various projects. And when people earn income, which is basically indicated by delta Y. So when income is increased of the consumers or the people who are working, obviously they will not spend all what they are earning. Now the question is, how would they decide to spend? It is simple. It depends upon their attitude, their consumption habits. But we are discussing the Keynesian models. According to Keynes, it is natural for the consumer, for the people who are earning, that they would save part of their earning. And if this is the case, that people do not spend 100% of their income, rather they spend 70, 80, 90% of their income, and the remaining 10, 20, 30% is saved, then here arises the concept of MPC, marginal propensity to consume. What is marginal propensity to consume? Marginal propensity to consume is simply the change in consumption due to change in income. Change in consumption due to change in income. And if you want to learn this in mathematical equation, it is the ratio of delta C to delta Y. So delta C over delta Y. Delta C over delta Y means the source of variation is income, and the effect is shown in terms of consumption. So delta C over delta Y, which is not shown here, but it is very simple to understand, delta C over delta Y. So always what is mentioned in the denominator, that shows the source of change, and whatever is shown in the numerator, that is actually the effect of the change in source. So MPC is the net effect of change in income on consumption. So if there is increase in income by $1, how much consumption will be increased? That is known as MPC. Let me redefine MPC. Marginal propensity to consume shows addition to the consumption as a result of increase in income by $1 or 1 rupee or 1 unit. So now proceeding further, basically this MPC is the source of multiplication of income in the economy. If this MPC is higher, if people in every round consume greater proportion of their income, it means they are creating demand for different goods and services. If they are spending less, they are creating less demand. If they are spending more, they are creating more demand for goods and services. So in simple words, we can say if MPC rises, the multiplier effect will be large. If MPC decreases, now decrease in MPC means people don't want to spend much of their increased income, so there will be less increase in demand and the less increase in national income. So this is simple calculation. The calculation which is shown in the red circle, so in a rectangular shape, red rectangle shape. So in this rectangle shape, which is in fact the boundary, so in this boundary the effect of change in government expenditure has been shown on the national income. How with the change in G the national income increases, how with the increase in G the national income increases, how with the decrease in G the national income will decrease. And 1 over 1 minus MPC indicates by how much amount this increase in G will be multiplied. On the next slide I have given one numerical example. If you look at this numerical example, basically this is simplification of this expression which was given in the rectangle. It is simplification, just transposing delta G on the other side. Transposing delta G on the left hand side, it becomes delta Y over delta G. So this delta Y over delta G indicates that if government expenditures are increased by say $1, so how much there will be addition to the national output. That obviously depends upon the right hand side of the equation, which is 1 over 1 minus MPC. If you simply substitute the value of MPC equal to 0.8, the result is 5. This 5 means if government expenditures are increased by $100, the national income will increase 5 times, which means $500. So this is the magic of the multiplier effect or the marginal propensity to consume. So this was just on the lighter note. It is not magic, in fact it is the science of macroeconomic activities by which national income increases much higher than the increase in government expenditures. So if government expenditures increase by 1, the national output increases by 5. Now this ratio you can increase to any level. 100 increase in G, 500 increase in output. 1000 increase in G, 5000 increase in the national output. Now a very interesting thing is here, let us now discuss a few things related to this MPC. In fact, this was a conventional system. If you just practice yourself, I have put the value of MPC equal to 0.8 and you try it for 0.9. A slight increase in MPC. Slight increase in MPC means the increase in consumption habits whenever people's income increases. So with the increase in this MPC from 0.8 to 0.9, you know what will be the size of this multiplier? It will be 10. 1 over 1 minus 0.9 is 1 over 0.1, which is in fact 10. So you see, just by increasing MPC by 0.1 from 0.8 to 0.9, the size of multiplier is doubled. So it means now if MPC is 0.9, every dollar will increase by $10 in the economy. So every $1 investment turns out to be $10 in the economy. So see, this is the scientific effect of this MPC in the economic activities. Now, very important thing, just summing it up, I will discuss the significance of Islamic obligatory factor, which is known as zakat or infaq. So how these things affect the size of multiplier. Initially, if the increase in G, this I have already discussed. If Y increases, consumption increases. And if C increases, there will be further increase in income. If there is further increase in income, there will be further increase in consumption. And this channel of increase, then increase, reinforcing continues to prevail. Now, opposite will be the effect of taxation. If government taxes are raised, obviously these taxes, the amount of taxes will be deducted from people's income, and people will be left with relatively less amount of income, which is known as disposable income. So if people are levied taxes, they will be left with less amount of money income, and therefore they will be compelled to consume less. So there will be less increase in the aggregate demand, and or there will be downward shift in the aggregate demand like this. And when this aggregate demand is decreased on account of decrease in consumption, which resulted from increase in taxation. So tax reduce income, which reduce consumption, and this reduction in consumption shifts the aggregate expenditure line downward. This downward shift will have reverse effect, reverse multiplier effect. So reverse multiplier effect means decrease in national income like this. I hope it's clear, dear students, but watch this video 2-3 times, particularly focus on these calculations so that you can understand in a better way the functioning of macroeconomic system or the macroeconomic variables. You see here MPC carries minus sign. It's just on account of the burden on the consumers. So this burden of tax on the consumer, in fact, it reduces. So this reduction reduces their purchasing power. So this reduction in purchasing power is in fact indicated by minus sign. So students, the conclusion is, with the increase in tax, national income decreases. With the increase in government expenditures, national income increases. Both increase and decrease are on the multiplier process. Now, before I move on to the supply side economics, because this is the phenomena of the 1980s, when President Reagan was in the office of president in USA, that we will discuss a little later on, very brief, in very detail. But here I want to comment. Here I want to add one more thing. Now, if in this equation, the equation like this, instead of MPC is the normal propensity to consume of the people. What if people are also receiving zakat in an Islamic framework, in Islamic fiscal policy? When people are receiving zakat, obviously this marginal propensity to spend out of zakah money will also be another MPC, marginal propensity to spend. When people are receiving zakah, they will be spending a certain proportion of zakah completely, partly. So now there will be two components of MPC. One, the component of MPC out of the earning when people work somewhere, they receive income in return for their work and in return for their services, and they consume part of their income. And the other is zakah. So people receive zakah, and out of this receipt of zakah, they spend certain amount. So another component of MPC will be from zakah. So basically, in the presence of zakat system, or in the presence of the institution of zakah, MPC will be enhanced. And you remember I mentioned here that if you increase MPC by 0.1, that is from 0.8 to 0.9, the size of multiplier increases from 5 to 10. So can you imagine if the MPC is further enhanced on account of the addition of the zakah money? If people are recipient of zakah, their MPC will be much, much higher. And the size of multiplier will also be much higher than what we observe in the absence of zakah in conventional system. So here lies the importance or the significance of the Islamic fiscal policy tool, which is zakah. Now students, coming to the supply side economics. Supply side economics, very interesting, quite different from the Keynesian approach. Here the major emphasis was to enhance productive capacity, or to promote production side or the supply side. So the production side is in fact the supply side. So the supply side economics focus was on the increasing of productive capacity, or the production side or supply side of the economy. That is why the economists who supported this idea of promoting productive capacity, they are known as supply side economists. So this is also known as neoclassical economic thinking. And now what actually happened in supply side? In supply side economics, the main emphasis was on relieving the producer side from difficulties. तो ये कैसे पॉसिबल था? तो इस फ्रेमवर्क में जो प्रोड्यूसर थे, जितने भी एंटरप्राइजेस थी, उनको टैक्स रिलीफ दिया गया. टैक्स रिलीफ मिलने की वजह से देयर कैपेसिटी टू री इन्वेस्ट, द कैपेसिटी टू कंज्यूम मोर increase. For consumers, their capability to spend more money when taxes are low increases, and for the producers, obviously the investment demand increases. If the taxes are low, people would love to expand their production activities because there is no tax on the extra production or the additional production of goods and services. So students, this is about the supply side and the role of government in Islam. The role of government in Islam is a bit different. In traditional system, the government expenditures make the major tool and taxation make the major tool. We have discussed these two aspects of the government. One from the government expenditure side, the Keynesian framework, and the other on the supply side, it is on the tax cut policy. There is supply side. So on Keynesian side, it is demand side, and on the tax cut policy, it is the supply side. So a tax actually on the supply side, a tax cut was one of the tools. There were so many other options. There were so many other motivating factors which were adopted to promote supply side of the economics. So role of the government in traditional economy is like that. However, in Islamic framework, the government is divinely inspired. It is not per se, it is because it is divine responsibility. It is the religious responsibility of the state to play its inherent role. So this is because the government on this earth is in fact amana. The actual leadership is of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to Islamic knowledge. The actual ruler is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the government on this earth is just amana, and people who are working in the government, they are actually working as agents in Islamic concept. So agents not in negative sense, positive sense, but with greater responsibility. So functioning and the consumers, the individuals are working in both the capacity as consumers as well as suppliers. But by nature, man is greedy, man is weak, and he is not very stable, is unstable. Unstable in the sense that he is greedy. If he gets money, he is in search of some more money. So this is how. But in Islamic framework, against conventional system, it is not just material calculation of the fiscal policy or the fiscal measures or the effect of fiscal measures. It is not just material calculation, because in Islamic framework, in the fiscal policy, material calculation, yes, it may be one of the requirements in order to frame the appropriate policy, but additionally there is another responsibility, and that is the spiritual values must be supported. The spiritual values should be upheld. Therefore, in Islamic framework, the fiscal policy gives better performance, because it is, number one, divinely felt responsibility to play their role as agent on this earth. Number two, it is not only the material calculation of the fiscal policy or its effectiveness or its effect on the national income and output, but there is additional role, another additional role, and that additional role is that the spiritual values must be supported and must be upheld. So if these things are upheld, spiritual values and the moral values are upheld, the performance of such an economic system will be better, and the fiscal policy which incorporates these concepts will be a better fiscal policy in Islam. So continuing further, fiscal policy should be like, there is another role of the state which has been clearly stated and narrated in detail in Quran in Surah Yusuf, where the role of government has been in fact narrated. When king of Egypt, when he shares the horrible dream with his subjects, the members of his subject, actually the people who worked in his court, actually they could not give the clear interpretation of the king's dream. So then kings asked his people to search for a person who could tell him the dream, the interpretation of dream. Some of the subjects knew Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, who was in prison. So they mentioned the name of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam to the king, that Yusuf knows how to interpret dreams. So when Hazrat Yusuf was brought to before him, and what happened in the dream, now king actually narrated his dream, and here a few words are being shared with you. So in the dream, the king saw 7 green ears of wheat and 7 withered or dying ears of wheat. Then Prophet Yusuf interpreted the dreams. The Prophet Yusuf said, that Egypt would enjoy 7 years of prosperity with abundant harvests. So it means there will be bumper crop, there will be good crop, अच्छी फसल होगी, बहुत कुछ उगेगा, ग्रेन होंगे यानी गंदम होगी, दाने होंगे, बहुत अच्छी फसल होगी. Then what will happen after some time? There will be famine. Now there will be famine, and now during this famine, the people will die of hunger. This was the warning given to the king, and king actually then asked Hazrat Yusuf to suggest the solution. Hazrat Yusuf gave the solution, and that solution is in fact a guiding principle for the Islamic fiscal policy. And what solution was given by Hazrat Yusuf? Yusuf alayhi salam said, during good times, when the crops are good, we should save part of it, so that when difficult times come, this saved part, these saved items should be used to survive. These saved items should be consumed in order to come out of this drought situation. So what happened? The king handed over the system of kingdom to Yusuf alayhi salam, and then Yusuf alayhi salam managed it very well. Now in this event there is a message, and that message is about the simple budgetary policy. And what is the simple budgetary policy? That we must save at good times and spend at bad times to recover, to survive. Because if we do not follow the prudent policy of this frugality or saving, then perhaps there will be problems at the bad time. Bad time means when there is drought, when economic activities slow down, when there is recession, unemployment is increasing in the economy. So if this is the case, obviously all these situations can be handled by prudent fiscal policy. Actually, there is a message as well, another message as well here, that the governments generally enjoy luxuries when they are earning more. During boom period, during the good times, when they are having good output, good revenues, they start spending this revenue in order to enjoy luxuries, which is a very bad policy according to the Islamic framework of fiscal policy. In Islamic fiscal policy, the government should rationalize its expenditures all the time. So when they are earning more, when the revenues are good, when the earnings are better, the government should save part of it, should invest somewhere where government could get some revenues in the future time to come, and should not suffer from any problems or any constraints when the recessionary situation starts prevailing in the economy. But Keynesian concept is totally different. Keynes gave the explanation of depression and then the solution to come out of this depression, and that included, the Keynesian prescription included more spending at the time of recession and depression. The question is how the government will manage and arrange the revenues, the resources at the time of recession, when there is less income, when there is no income. The Quranic principles are different. So the fiscal policy in Islamic framework is different. So prudent policy, rationalizing the revenues and income when there are good times, and then rationally, logically, prudently spending this income when there is recession or when there is bad crop or bad time. So it looks quite reverse. The fiscal policy allows government to overspend during economic boom, as I mentioned earlier. The government manipulate actually, there is another point of difference between the conventional fiscal policy and Islamic fiscal policy. In conventional fiscal policy framework, the taxes can be manipulated in accordance with the need. If government needs more revenues, there are two options. One is government should increase the tax base, which means many more people are brought into the tax net. So if many people are registered as a taxpayers, then government revenues will increase even if the tax rate is reasonably low. The other option for the government to raise revenues is that government raise the tax rate. If government is unable to broaden the tax base, then the other option is that government should increase the tax rate. So by this method, government will be earning a lot of revenue. So these are basically the methods of manipulating tax. So can we manipulate zakat in Islamic framework and fiscal policy? As far as taxes are concerned, yes, government has the option of manipulating it, increasing, decreasing, adjusting it in accordance with the need of the state, or in accordance with the conditions of the economy or the people of the state. So generally in Islamic fiscal policy, the taxes are not advisable. Yes, if the circumstances demand government to levy taxes, the government should levy taxes with the principle of ability to pay. Those who can pay, only those people should be taxed. But there is no way to manipulate zakat. Zakat is, the rate of zakat is clearly mentioned in Quran and Sunnah, so we cannot manipulate it. We cannot decrease zakat rate, we cannot increase zakat rate. And the zakat rate is clearly defined for each and every goods, services, savings. Even zakat on agriculture produce is also clearly mentioned, which cannot be changed by the people. There must be great. Why? The question is why. The simple answer is, if you are a believer, then there is no question of asking why. If something is clearly mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it looks odd to raise the question. There must be some philosophy, and that is why when certain questions arise in our mind, that actually motivates us to do research, to find out what is the hikmah, what is the philosophy of 2.5% zakah, what is the philosophy of imposing ushr, 110, and so on. If you are interested in understanding more detail about zakat system, you can read the book, very good book, a masterpiece in zakat, Allama Yusuf Qaradawi's book on zakat. So dear students, this is the major difference between Islamic concept of fiscal policy and conventional concept of fiscal policy. Now let me share with you the traditional sources of revenue of the Islamic State in old time. So at the time of Khulafa Rashidin, these were generally the sources of income. The Islamic State was expanding every day. Every new day, not only the Islamic State, geography of the Islamic State was expanding, but the income sources were also expanding. And these were the sources. Zakah was levied, Kharaj, which is land tax, and Jizya, the poll tax on non-Muslims. In return for Jizya, the Islamic State was responsible to provide safety and security to the non-Muslims so that they could perform their religious duties in accordance with their religion. Then Ghanima, the spoils of war, because Islamic State was expanding and it was the period of the spread of Islam throughout the world. So Islamic State had to have war with some of the states and conquered a lot of land which was added to the Islamic State. Ushur, this is different from Ushr, this is custom duty. The duties were also, toll tax were also charged during the Islamic State. So Islamic State was a very rich state at that time. Students, another important concept is of resource mobilization. Resource mobilization in Islamic framework, how it is different from the traditional, conventional economy. So according to Keynes, the level of output is determined by the demand. More demand for goods and services, the consumers, business, government means higher spending, and there will be more employment opportunities, more output will be produced, as he mentioned earlier. To increase aggregate demand on the part of monetary policy, as I mentioned earlier in one of the previous lectures, that in economic system, monetary and fiscal policies are interlinked. And I think the course which you are studying is very well designed, and the title of the course is very well justified on the principle that the fiscal and the monetary policies are interlinked. Sole fiscal or independent of monetary policy cannot successfully function. So if a state is planning to decrease the interest rate or KIBOR, this will promote people to borrow more money, to invest more in the economy, and investment is the source of capital formation in the economy. So if capital formation is there, there is addition to the productive capacity and the national economy will recover. But here very important question arises. Suppose government agencies decrease the interest rate or the KIBOR, which is used as a benchmark to charge more. If people are insensitive, if people do not respond to this, as happened at the time of Great Depression after the World War, then what will happen? It means the total monetary policy failure. So then what can be done? What can be done? In Islamic framework, Islamic institutions are more strong. Islamic institutions have multiple options. Since Islamic institutions believe in participatory investment, sharing the profit, sharing the loss, sharing the profit at the time of booming activities, and sharing the loss at the time of recessionary activities. So therefore, Islamic system is more strong. Similarly, the concept of Baitul Mal, which is Islamic treasury, this Islamic treasury is in fact the noble source of revenues as well as expenditures at the difficult times. So if economy is in trouble, the money from Baitul Mal can also play a very significant role, which can be very prudently used in order to enhance the consumption capacity of the people so that aggregate demand is promoted once again at the time of at a difficult situation. Islamic public assets such as zakat funds and waqf properties are available at very large scale in the Islamic countries, including Pakistan, that can be appropriately utilized for the benefits of the general public. In Pakistan, Malaysia, there are a lot of waqf land. Malaysia has started utilizing this land for productive activities. In Pakistan, although this the system of waqf and awqaf is not so efficient, not so productive. There is a need to improve this system. So this will enhance the government assets, and these government assets can be utilized on the basis of participatory investment, which can help the government to improve economic activities in the economy. So generally what is happening in Pakistan, people who are capturing or possessing the Waqf property, they are paying very low rents to the government, and some of the people even have captured and converted the Waqf property to their own names. So when Pakistan got independence, there was a lot of property which was declared as Waqf property. Now there is need to utilize it more productively for the purpose of agriculture, business, or other enterprising activities. 8 heads of zakah. From the 8 heads of zakah, fi sabilillah the spending in fi sabilillah is very flexible, which help Islamic State in the perspective of fiscal policy, and this can be used for different purposes. For example, can be used for the establishment of educational institutions, medical colleges, can be used for defense purpose, can be used for communication, can be used for the development of infrastructure, and this will continue supporting the economic activities at the time of recession. Surplus of zakah and idle amount of Waqf lands are needed to be revived in the best advantage of the people that I have already explained. Now, there will be sufficient projects for contractors as well as other interested parties, as I mentioned earlier, if the Waqf property is properly brought to the utilization of the economy. Dear students, now we are concluding. We are at the verge of concluding our session. The macroeconomic policy in Islam can indeed cover a wide array of topics. It is not single topic. So in this lecture, effort has been made to address a few. Basically, these conclusions also cover the previous lecture. So basically, this is the conclusion of the 2 lectures, not just this lecture. The Islamic economic system must, in the first place, ensure economic justice and economic transactions. This will make macroeconomic management to be pursued to the minimum, while the state will always be in constant surveillance to see the economic growth and stability, and this will definitely provide a guarantee and security to the economic system or the economies. If governments fail to exercise restraint on excessive expenditure during good times, then the fiscal policy will not be a prudent fiscal policy at difficult times. If government did not develop the habit of restraining or constraining the expenditures, so frugality should be adopted at the time when income is high, when the governments are earning a lot of revenues. Conventional theories emphasize much more on analyzing the consumer behavior to protect economy from economic problems, creating inflation, deflation, stagflation. Their focus is to maximize profit and minimize losses. However, Islamic goals are different from the conventional goals. It can only it does not only stress upon the material growth and the well-being, but also spiritual growth. So a sort of balance is required to be created in the economy: spiritual growth plus material growth, spiritual growth plus material growth. If any one of them is on the weaker part, then it will create imbalance in the economy and there will be troubles. So zakat and waqf system should be improved. Saving and investment are really important during the economic boom in the light of Quranic education narrated in Surah Yusuf. The benefits of savings in good times turn into investment and accrue benefits during the economic recession. Dear students, this is the message. The conclusion is a message for the students to understand Islamic financial system, or the system of an Islamic economy where fiscal policy in Islamic perspective can function more successfully if zakat as an institution is framed and implemented properly, and the fiscal measures are used more prudently. Well, this is the end of the lecture, and in the end let me very quickly go through what we have done in this lecture. This is the topic of today's lecture. Basically this topic is in continuation of our previous lecture. We very quickly reviewed. I shared with you the start or the beginning of fiscal policy at the time of Keynes after the World War. Then I shared with you this model, the Keynesian model in closed economy, 3-sector closed economic model with graphical and mathematical illustration. I highlighted the significance of marginal propensity to consume. Then I shared with you how this MPC can be further enhanced with the introduction of zakat system, and then this expenditure line is likely to shift with a greater gap if there is Islamic financial system. Fiscal policy we discussed in Islamic perspective, how it is different from the conventional perspective. In Faridi model, if you remember, we discussed 3-sector model. Basically there was private sector, there was public sector, and there was voluntary sector. Now voluntary sector makes very important component of the Islamic fiscal policy. I shared with you some of the revenue sources of the Islamic State, and then we discussed the options of mobilizing Baitul Mal asset and the savings of the economy and how they can be mobilized. The Islamic State has had a number of options. It can be Mudarba based, Musharaka based, it can be Istisna based, and so many other options are there for the Islamic State, which are participatory in nature. Participatory in the sense that the profits are shared at the time of good earning and the losses are shared if there is any bad time or recession. Then in the end we conclude. I hope it was helpful in understanding the fiscal policy in comparison with the conventional fiscal policy. So thank you and Allah Hafiz. See you in the next lecture with the new dimension of the fiscal policy. Allah Hafiz.